Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of the Showrunner Whisperer. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who checked out episode one with Kero Shimizu, and it was so much fun getting to finally release the first episode and just getting everyone's thoughts. I've seen some lovely comments already, and thank you everyone who's been spreading some of the quotes around. I always appreciate the support and just yeah, just spreading around because we're trying to get this new show up and running, and we're trying to get more people's attention of it. So it's massively appreciated. And so, yeah, but if for anyone who's listening, if you haven't checked it out, the episode is live right now on showrunnerwhisper.com and anywhere you get your podcast at. And don't forget if you're new to the show, you should hit that subscribe button, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or YouTube, whatever you fits, whatever floats the boat, as the old people would say it. Um, so what today we have another special guest with us. He has worked in the TV and film industry for quite a while, and but a lot of you guys may know of his work for the Swamp Thing TV show. So it was my honor to interview Mr. Mark Verheiden back in, I would say this was also in December, right before the holidays. And we had a really, really interesting conversation and getting into, what was sadly a short lived show, but still something that was so incredible that it still talks about to this day. And I hope that for all you Swamp Thing fans out there, that some of his answers may give you some closure. But we also talked, we talked about a lot of things, from how he got started out to running this TV show and kind of just what was going on behind the scenes. So, I'm going to stop talking and let you go enjoy our interview with Mr. Mark Verheiden. But once again, thank you so much for supporting the podcast and are checking out episode one. Don't forget, if you want, you can follow the podcast on all the social media and subscription platforms in the links below. I'll be back right after this interview. So with that said, let's have a listen to my chat with Mark Verheiden. I feel like I can start a discussion like that about writing without talking a little bit about the big writer strike that you guys finished going through, and we're now towards the end of the year. You guys finally got an amazing deal, it seems. What's your state of mind right now of having gone through you were talking about, like, not almost your third strike?
Well, look, they're always hard, and it was a strike worth doing. I think very much so. The business is in a crazy amount of upheaval right now. All you have to do is read the news. I mean, like today's news is that Warner Brothers wants to buy Paramount, so
Yeah.
another consolidation. So, it's a world that's getting much smaller in a way. When 10 years ago, we had all these different streamers, we had the studios, we had, TV networks still buying a lot of shows. And a lot of that's now starting to consider. It went crazy for a little while. There were like 700 shows, but now it's starting to consolidate. And as it does that, we just need to make sure our rights as writers are protected. And we need to make sure that the streamers, especially, I think, are paying their fair share, which because the streamers and even the smaller, in quotes, networks like CW, they get deals at first from the Writers Guild because they're smaller, they're new startups, that kind of stuff. But after a while, they're not startups. They're multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar organizations. And so I don't think we need to cut those deals like we used to. Of course, they don't want to change those deals. And so it took months to convince them. And we'll see where things go. I'm cautiously optimistic. All things are change. I've been doing this since 1990. It's always been changing. I mean, when I started, basically it was HBO and Showtime and 3 networks, and that was kind of it. And so stuff keeps changing. So
Wow, I'm trying to just imagine a world where it was just HBO, Showtime, and like 2 or 3 broadcast networks, because now there's everything that we consume today. So that's insane. But no, but again, I as a journalist, who had to follow the strike and report and so, and also see kind of just how the studios were also behaving through the
mhm.
press. Was, like, how was that for you as a creator, as an artist, seeing how, you had CEOs saying, oh, we want to drive them out of their apartments, and oh, we will extend this till for as long as we need to, or we're gonna get AI to write this for us. How did it affect you personally?
um, you know, I've dealt with studios and stuff for a long time, networks. I kind of know business speak. I also know negotiating, and so I'm not like, I'm fairly conversant in network speak. And so, you can't let that stuff frighten you that much. They're going to talk tough, and the writers talk tough too. So, it's a game of negotiation. I thought we had some great negotiators, and I thought they did an excellent job, getting a great deal ultimately. But it takes time sometimes, and threats of AI and threats of stuff like that. AI is coming. How it impacts whatever everyone does remains to be seen, just as how the internet ended up impacting everything remains to be seen. When I started, the internet was not certainly like the world that it is now. It was considerably smaller. There were, I don't even know if AOL existed back then. It may have, but that would have been one of the early ones, obviously. And now it's turned into this behemoth that it's become. So it's hard to know where these things will go. And I don't think you can worry about everything. You need to approach things in a creative way and doing the best job you can. And that's about all you can do. That you can only control your little corner of the universe. You can't change the rest of it. Although as a collective, you can fight against some of the worst abuses.
Amen to that. No, but again, I'm excited to see how this new deal will now be worked out throughout these next couple of years, and hopefully, 'cause, yeah, because it's insane that we were living in a time where studios were really thinking we don't need writers, we can do this on our own. Like, no, like, you guys are the ones who create all the things that we see on screen, and then of course, yeah, that's why I'm like, I didn't think it was going to last as long as it did, because I remember, I was like 12, 13 when the original strike happened in '07. So the fact that this one went on as long as it did, it just shows that you guys are willing to fight for your right, and that's extremely inspiring, of course.
But it is, of course, incredibly hard. And by the way, not just on writers, on everyone else, on crew and on cast and on everybody who's not working. And we're just coming out of a pandemic, and so I think we were all. I don't want to say we're all. I think many of us were very, very aware of how this was affecting others, and I think what made us well, it certainly made me feel better about things was when SAG went on strike as well, and it became clear it wasn't just the writers against the universe. There was a more commonality here, and now here in the States there are strikes sort of across all sorts of jobs now. A hospital strike going on right now in LA. There have been hotel worker strikes. People are fighting for their rights. They always have, and I think they feel a little more. I don't know. Maybe the pandemic gave them a little more traction to want to fight a little harder.
No, absolutely, and then we also know that VFX artists are now also they're coming out and
Yeah,
finally stepping up for their rights too. So yeah, it's fun watching like the young generation not thinking that unions are that oh, who needs unions? Like, no, unions they're crucial to the infrastructure, so that any worker in any field can be respected and get the compensation that they deserve, because there's so much in the world that is created by hardworking people, and they deserve to be paid. So the first
by
question.
the way, I'll just add, get a little older and you're very happy for pensions and health care. So, which is what they have and what a lot of people in creative fields don't have. So, I'm incredibly appreciative of that stuff. So, anyway.
No. Thank you for saying that. So the first question I always ask to my guests on the show is, what is your definition of a showrunner?
Boy, that's a good question. It kind of depends on the definition of what show you're on and how the role is being applied. In other words, I've been on showrunners where I've been more of a writer showrunner, and there were more producers because I did a show that shot in New Zealand, but most of the writers were in Los Angeles. And so, as a showrunner, my job was to sort of keep the stories going and to mount the stories. The last show I did, which was called Swamp Thing, I was very much on set a lot and involved in hiring and, the whole panoply of things. So, but if I boil it all down to what's most important about a showrunner, I think it's to protect the story that you agreed to tell. Because there's so many diverse voices that'll come in and second guess. And by the way, sometimes second guessing makes sense. I mean, if you look at how things are evolving or changing, you do need to rethink something you thought might work at the beginning and may not work now. But I think you need to keep that original intent in mind and fight for it as much as you can. So, a showrunner is to keep the train on the tracks, for lack of a better word, to keep production going, to keep the writer's room going, to keep the edit room going, to maintain a consistent tone of things. And that's a long definition, but the shorter one really is to protect the story you were brought in to tell. And sometimes it's a story you created and brought in, and sometimes it's a story that you're adapting. Sometimes, like, I've come in late not late, but I mean in a later season to a show to run it, in which case you already have a lot of things established. Casting's been mostly done. There's a lot of crew that already working, sets have been built. So your job is a little more, the story, and you're not creating it from the ground up. When you're from the ground up, you're developing costumes and you're developing everything. So it kind of depends on where you come into the show and what the definition of your position is when you come into it.
I know you because you're not just a writer of television and film, but you're also a comic book writer. So if people have to pick up issue 1 of your origin story of how you got into the world of writing, what does that origin story look like? Like, how did you get into all this?
Well, I've always, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, I always wanted to be a writer, in quotes, but I didn't really know what that meant. I grew up in Oregon, which is a state north of California. I grew up in a little suburban community. There was no filmmaking community back then, really much, very, very small. But I always wanted to be a writer. I love film and I loved comics. So, of course, what happened is I moved to Los Angeles to want to break into screenwriting because that's what I always wanted to do, and ended up writing comics for a few years, which was great. And comics ended up leading me back into film and TV and shows like Time Cop and The Mask. Led me, basically I wrote those as movies and they brought me back in, and I got some TV offers and, I was off from there. So I sort of evolved out of comics into writing movies and television, more movies than TV at first. And then pretty much all TV, which I enjoyed more just because you're closer as a writer producer, you're closer to the end product than you are as a writer on a film. So, but it all comes back to I love telling stories, and I love making up stories, and I always have. And I love just the craft of writing, and so that's my origin story, I guess. My father was an electrical engineer, but his proudest moments, I recall, when I was a kid, was he had articles published in electrical engineering magazines for which he got like $7, but he was very proud of those because he enjoyed writing too. He wrote like 40 or 50 of those. So maybe that rubbed off a little bit.
I've always found it very very incredible to see people who start in comic and then eventually they make it their way to TV and film and so on. Like, do you feel like when you were writing comic, was there something from the comic world that helped you prepare for when you were doing more TV and film later on?
Well, I always thought very visually. And so, when I was writing comics, I wrote full script, which you don't have to do that, but you can. And so I would describe each panel and describe what was in it. And I think that helped. You're thinking of what the world looks like, so you're learning how to imagine worlds. And you also learn, frankly, when you're working in comics or in any creative field where you're being paid, you learn deadlines and you learn speed and you learn how to make creative decisions and stick to them and things like that. But comics were, I don't want to call them a learning ground because I'm still doing them. I love comics. They're very separate from movies, actually. They're a whole different literary form. So when people say comics are storyboards for movies or whatever, it's really not true. And just ask any screenwriter who tries to do comics, and they learn that, you can't have a guy kick in a door and come through the door like you do in a movie. It takes 3 seconds. Well, you got to show the guy come up to the door in comics. You got to show him kick in the door. You got to show him going through. It takes up half a page. So it's an entirely different construct. But I think that the thinking visually really helped coming into it. And frankly, from just a commercial point of view, that helped me. Comics got very hot after I started writing them. And so, my comics background, which hurt me at the very beginning, I'd go into meetings and people, they wouldn't even want to look at my comics. And they'd think they're, trash. They didn't want anything to do with that. Then the Batman movie came out, the first one, Michael Keaton, and whoa, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing. So, and that evolved as comics got bigger and bigger and bigger.
You were talking about like how you would write full script and be very descriptive. It almost sounds like storyboarding without actually drawing. I'm like, when you went over to doing more TV and film, like do you storyboard scenes that you write?
I storyboard them in my head. I don't do that because that's really the director's job, is to visualize it, and I'm not a director, so I don't like to pretend that I can take that away from them. And by the way, if you try, then they're going to do something way better than what you thought of anyway, usually. So if you have good directors, which you usually do, I storyboard in my head, and then I'm always intrigued and impressed by what directors bring to it. So, but yes, I do think visually. When I think of a scene, and when you get into writing film and television, when you think of a scene, you don't only think of it in terms of what's the best drama, but there are certain contingencies you have to deal with, and especially in television, of budget and what you can afford, and are your characters in this story, and a whole bunch of things you keep in mind when you're working on a story for television that you don't necessarily have to think of in comics. Comics, if you dream up a rocket ship, somebody can draw it. That costs whatever their imagination and ink costs. And in TV, it can cost a few bucks.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, you worked on so many shows throughout your career. Before you were showrunning as Swamp Thing, was there a showrunner that you had previously worked for that had a huge impact on you, that you learned a lot from, that you got a lot of experience from, that still sticks with you today?
Yeah, I think you learn from every show. By the way, you learn sometimes good, sometimes bad. But working on Battlestar Galactica with Ron Moore, Ron was just such a he's who I would model myself of wanting to be as a showrunner, because he was open to ideas from the writer's room. He was a very calm presence. He was just, I think, being open to ideas was the best part. And I learned some other things from him too, about how, it really doesn't help to bring all the grief that the showrunner is feeling from the studio down on the writers. that doesn't give you too much because it's not their fault, and it's your job to really take that. And but he was very open about having the writers on set and working with the cast. And there's some people that get very possessive of set and cast, and Ron was very possessive of the show. It's his show with David Icke, another good guy. I liked Ron's style of running a show, and obviously Battlestar was a great show. So I hope it's not too egotistical to say that, but
No.
I loved working on the show. I'm still good friends with many of the writers, and it was just a great show.
No. I don't think it's egotistical at all. I think Battlestar Galactica. Again, I didn't grow up with it, but like people around me who were also really big into sci-fi. It's like that's one of the top 3 shows that always keeps bringing up in that genre of that. It was iconic. Like it was something that was very unique for its time. So yeah, no, please, toot your own horn as much as you want. I am here for it. Moving into Swamp Thing, that was your recent work as a showrunner.
Okay.
Do you remember how did you get involved with Swamp Thing? Let's just start there for a second.
Like a lot of things, I should go back. I was a huge fan of Swamp Thing. The Alan Moore, Steve Bissett, John Toddleman run in the 80s I had sort of dropped out of reading comics back then. And then somebody said, you got to read this book. And it was fantastic. It still is. It's a great book, great to read. And so I was a fan to begin with. I got a call from, as happens with a lot of these things, my agent, who said they're looking for someone to run with Gary Dauberman, who's recently, he wrote and directed Annabelle and some other things. He's a really good guy. To work with him on, running a Swamp Thing show with James Wan. All those things added together, I'd be interested in that. So I went in and took a meeting, and I think they met with a few other people, but we ended up doing it together. It's, there's other steps, but not that many actually. Basically it's, can you work together? Do you have a passion for the material? Are they sane? And Gary and James were fantastic. Atomic Monster, who is one of the producers, great people. You want all those factors. If you've done it for a while, you want everybody involved with you to be not crazy, better than not crazy. They were just great. That was it. And so we sat down and started dreaming up what we thought would be a cool Swamp Thing series.
And I'm more than cool. Absolutely. And because you had already worked on comic book shows like Smallville and Daredevil and Constantine, what did you bring over from working on those shows onto Swamp Thing?
Smallville was kind of its own beast. It really, it kind of sprung out of Superman myths, but I don't think, really wasn't based on a comic like Swamp Thing was, or Constantine or Daredevil. What I liked about, especially about Daredevil, was sort of, it really captured the feel of the Daredevil I loved, which was the sort of Gene Colan, Stan Lee, early-ish Daredevil. Frank Miller, again, Frank Miller stuff. Captured those worlds of Daredevil. Nothing discourages me more than hearing about a comic book project where, well, let's throw the comic book out and just sort of reimagine it. I don't get that. And then why are you doing that show? I guess it's just IP, or whatever. You can just try to market something. But especially Daredevil and Constantine to some extent, although Constantine, well, I thought we got the look of Constantine really well. Matt Ryan, who played Constantine, was fantastic as Constantine, great guy. Obviously went on to play him in other shows. I thought we got that right. I thought we ran into some sort of headwinds from the network in terms of just what they wanted the show to be. And that's not the showrunner's fault, who is a really good guy. It's just, you run into that sometimes. Daredevil, Netflix pretty much opened it up, let you do what you wanted to do, and bring the Punisher in and do those stories, which were very much a part of Daredevil's soul. So with Swamp Thing, we wanted to capture that. What we wanted to do is really capture. We couldn't capture exactly the comics, and we knew that. We felt we wanted to, but we wanted to do as much as we could. We wanted to capture the tone and the mood and the characters, and that swampy feel, and embrace the characters. So we used mostly characters that were in the comic.
Because Swamp Thing, one of the things that I love so much about it was that you guys really went for a lot of practical effects. Like like I remember just seeing, I remember the WonderCon that you guys were at when we got a little glimpse of Swamp Thing, and it just looked so insane for a TV show. You said that your role as a showrunner, you were a lot on set. How was it, managing, making sure that, hey, let's try and adapt as much as we can from the comic, but also like adding something of our own. Not like, what's the right word? Not trying to reinvent it, but just trying to apply a best of both worlds. If that makes sense.
It's a fine balance. It's you're trying to tell dramatic stories. As a serialized show, so you're trying to tell a story that continues over. I think we had 13 episodes until we got cut back to 10. Make involving characters. And Swamp Thing had very involving characters. Sometimes there weren't that many characters in the book, and so we would employ other ones from different parts of different stories and bring them in. It's an evolution. Then you're also working with the studio and network to hear their thoughts as you're going forward, and address them as you can. Sometimes casting has a lot to do with it, and who you get and how that helps you see a character and where you want to go with them. Even as you're into scripts, you cast a Will Patton as someone. Will is someone I love. You get a feel for who that is. Virginia Madsen, you get a feel for who she is. Jennifer Beals, you get a feel for who that's going to be. Andy Bean, who played before he turned Swamp Thing. He's great. We just had a great cast. Dan, who's gone on to be on Reacher.
Crystal Reed.
Crystal Reed's amazing. She was fantastic. So, we had a great cast. Derek, who is Swamp Thing, he brought a real pathos to that. But yeah, the main thing I wanted to capture was the pathos of Swamp Thing, the horror of the swamp, the sort of how it's bringing everybody kind of into this seepy, weird, swampy world of this fake New Orleans area we created, and take it from there. And then you're just developing stories.
You were talking about that you guys initially had 13, then got down to 10, which kind of is a little bit of a segue into, because the show was already, it was so hyped up and people were so excited for it. It was doing so well. And then we sadly got the early news about it not coming back. And there were all these reports about why that was. And, we're now almost 4 years after all that happened. What is something that you would love to clear up for people? Like, what went down with why Swamp Thing didn't go forward when it seemed like a no-brainer? It's a success. People are loving it. What was the story behind that?
Well, that's a tough one.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't asking tough questions.
No, you can ask it. I think the one thing I'd like to clear up is this idea that somehow the show was wildly over budget, or the other one I've heard is that the state of North Carolina had reneged on its tax breaks. Neither of those are true at all. And they're an insult to our producers, who did a fantastic job keeping the show on track budget-wise. So I just don't like hearing that at all. It never had a chance to really show what it could do because we were canceled the day after the first episode came out. So on streaming, I don't know. The short version is I don't really know why things went down the way they did. I never got a particularly expansive answer to that. Sometimes bad things happen. I'm sure there were reasons. I mean, it was not a cheap show. Warner Brothers was going through yet another one of its reorganizations, which it seems to do like every year and a half now. There may have just been a fundamental misunderstanding about the show we were making versus the show they were expecting, although there were certainly no secrets about the show we were making. James Wan is not, he's not the guy who makes Barbie. He makes horror shows. So, and Gary Dauberman, again, he's not he's not crafting Hallmark shows. He's doing Annabelle and the Salem's Lot. So, you know, they knew what they were buying, and so I've never been quite sure. At this point, I don't really care because it's water under the bridge, and you know. By the way, virtually everyone involved in those decisions has gone off to other things, and you know, as the world turns. So you can't be mad at anybody because they're all gone anyway. So, and also anger is a bad emotion. Eat you up. So next.
Yeah, you were talking about you guys knew what the show wanted to be, but the studios, they had a different idea. What, you know, again, so talk about like navigating as a showrunner, like in terms of like dealing with notes of theirs. Like what were they looking for in Swamp Thing that just, you know, it didn't pan out the way they were wanting it to?
I wish I'd known. I don't know. You know, sometimes it felt like they were very much on board with the scary things, and then sometimes it felt like they weren't. I don't know. So the notes process was pretty intense, but mostly it was about story, and it was never like throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, it was this story needs this or that story needs that. I wish I knew. Maybe somebody else knows better than I do. But you know, I've never been that political when it comes to this stuff, so I don't know what machinations were going on. And again, I've gotten to a place I just don't care. You know, it's just you got to just move on. I've done plenty of shows. I've worked on a lot of things. Some work out, some don't. You do learn over time. You just have to roll with the punches. You know, you got to move on. There's no point in trying to second guess or figure it out. Because, by the way, even if I did figure it out, what good would that do me? They're not going to bring the show out, bring it back because I figured it out. So
maybe give you a sense of conclusion at least, you know, because I, as an artist, I imagine that it's, you know, like I know that some little things can really like eat you up when you don't get, but like why, you know, I put so much heart and energy into this, and then it ended up like this, but I don't understand why. So, you know, like I'm just sensing that maybe like getting a little bit of a conclusion to something like that could at least be, you know, good for the soul.
Maybe. I mean, you know, in terms of conclusion, when you get a call saying you're done, then, you know, that's a conclusion. There's no ambiguity there. So the whys and wherefores, by the way, I'll backtrack a little bit. Something that, another thing I've sort of learned over time, don't ask the question if you don't want to hear the answer. In other words, if the answer is it's all your fault, I'm not sure I want to know that either. You know, so it doesn't help me, and it's just. And by the way, it's not all my fault because there's a million people involved in these things. Yes, I was the showrunner with Gary, and so ultimately it's our names that, you know, are up there. We take responsibility for the show we made. However, I'm incredibly proud of the show we made. So you can't take that from me.
You should be. You should be. I mean, it's a Swamp Thing is still one of the most talked about, you know, shows in the DC era of all time. Like, I still have people that I talk to that are always like, "Man, I want another season of that show." Like, you know, oh my god, it's unbelievable that we didn't get more of it. So, you know, you guys. I mean, again, it's again, as someone who loves a lot of practicality and just seeing, you know, again, because just again, the first time we see Derek in that Swamp Thing suit, it's just like I thought like, oh, this is motion capture, you know, like how could someone build like this and put that on? But you know, so it's again like you guys should absolutely be proud of what you made. And
I think we are to a man. I think we were all quite stunned at how things went. But you know, sometimes that's how it goes. You know, I remember the day after we were canceled, I just came in the next day to work on some effects because we had to wrap up the show. We had a lot of things to do actually on the last few weeks of the show, and one of the effects guys turned to me and he just said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Fine." You know, what can I do? What is? Am I happy? Not particularly, but it is what it is. So Again, ultimately, what matters to me now is that I'm proud of the show we made. And, I look at it as not like we didn't get to do 5 seasons. We got to do 10 episodes that I can be proud of. So, I'll take that from it. I've been on some shows where I go like, I won't say which ones, but
Right.
I'm happy that may have gone away. But although I'm never happy when a show goes away, because it's not just me that's being affected; it's all the crew and the cast and everybody, and it just has an incredible effect on everyone. Something you need to remember when you're on these shows, by the way, is that decisions you're making don't just impact you; they impact all these hundreds of people working on the show. So I never do things lightly, or just the next, which I sort of sounded like I was doing there, but um, I didn't cancel the show; they did. So
The Showrunner Whisperer is brought to you exclusively by Multiverse of Color. Multiverse of Color is your home for fresh takes on the world of pop culture by established journalists and emerging content creators. It is your one-stop destination for a vast array of articles, as well as audio and video productions. Multiverse of Color features exclusive interviews, media event coverage, and film analysis. From Hollywood's biggest blockbusters to the most intimate independent projects. Visit multiverseofcolor.com for all the latest stories, and follow Multiverse of Color through the social media links in the description below. And now, back to the Showrunner Whisperer.
let's talk about something happier.
Yeah. No, no, but like, what was the thing you were most proud of with Swamp Thing? Like in terms of like getting you're talking about like wanting to really stay true to the books and to the looks of it all. What were you most proud of that you got to be part of making that show?
I thought we captured the tone of those Alan Moore, Steve Bissett, John Tottleman books. I thought we captured the tone and even the story sense of those well. So I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the performances we got out of the cast. I'm very proud of the writers. I'm proud of the crew. I'm proud of everybody, the directors. Across the board, I'm proud of the work we put into it. And by the way, it was not a easy production. Len Wiseman, by the way, who directed the first episode and the second episode, did a fantastic job. And I would be remiss not to mention him, an incredibly good guy who I thought did a fantastic job in setting the tone. He got it, he really got it. I'm just proud of everyone's work. But I'm most proud of that we seem to capture the thing that I thought was lacking a bit in the movies. And I don't want to put down the movies. They're fan favorites for some people. Very serious. We took Swamp Thing seriously. This was not a camp effort. This was Swamp Thing as a tragic figure trying to find a way to get through life. And if I had to point to one thing, is that I got to co-write the anatomy lesson, which is the episode where he learns who he really is. And that we got to do that, I was very, very pleased about. And I thought that turned out well. So
You guys got to play with a lot of DC characters on that show, like Blue Devil and Flower Man, and Floronic Man. Sorry, how was it for you as a showrunner working with DC, like in terms of like getting access to those characters and having those conversations? Like how do we tell their stories on in live action?
I think there were a few that we didn't have access to, but the Blue Devil was one that was suggested to us by DC, and so that was fun. And the fellow who played him was awesome.
Ian Ziering.
He's fantastic. He was just great as the Blue Devil. Great guy too. And so we thought he'd be a fun addition to the story. I always wanted to do the Phantom Stranger, and I was, it's funny. Macon Blair is not perhaps the first person you'd think of to play the Phantom Stranger, but when he was suggested, I would take no credit for the suggestion, but I just went, wow, that'd be amazing. And he agreed to do it, which was fantastic. So I thought he brought a real sort of, I don't even know how to put it, just a great sense of who the stranger is to the story, even though physically he didn't quite resemble the stranger that I grew up on anyway. So, And then, yeah, Floronic Man, unfortunately, got violently truncated. He was going to be the last 3 episodes, and you saw a hint of him at the end of episode 10 in an incredibly expensive suit that we never got to use. So, but that would have been the last 3 episodes, would have been Swamp Thing and the Floronic Man's meeting.
I love that you guys were. I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into things, but it always felt like you guys were, because I know Swamp Thing was in its own world. Not connected to any other DC shows or movies at the time, but it kind of felt like you guys were really setting up the foundation for the supernatural and the horror side of DC. Am I right on? Am I on the right track that that's what you guys were going? Because you had Phantom Stranger, you had Product Man, you had Blue Devil. Like, I mean, again, because I thought this whole time, like, are they like secretly, like, casually just like getting ready to do Justice League Dark and Constantine and stuff like that? Like, was like, how far were you guys thinking of that?
Well, we have loved to have Constantine on the show, but he was on Legends of Tomorrow, so we couldn't use him. We frankly, we're building up to bringing in sort of a new big bad who is sort of the big baddie of the comics. It's funny, when I finish a show, I sort of bury him. I remember the good times, and I remember most of the people. Names kind of fade sometimes, but I remember everyone's faces. But I bury sort of the ideas. But we were going to do we're going to do a story involving the guy that's sort of this very dark presence in the Swamp Thing universe. Arcane. Okay, we were going to do him. Sorry, I had a brain fart. Anyway, obviously we didn't get to do that. In terms of Justice League Dark or any of that stuff, we hear the rumors like anybody else, but it had nothing to do with us, or me anyway, in terms of what we would think of or do. I think, there were definitely plans to do, I want to say Strange Adventure show. Maybe they did. I can't remember.
They were gonna do it with Greg Berlanti on HBO
Right.
Max, or Max as it's called now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
that's it.
Yeah, there were other plans for other darker shows, which never came about. Obviously, Justice League Dark never came about yet. James Mangold, who's a great guy, is apparently working on a Swamp Thing movie, which is great. He'll have a great take on it. So hopefully that maybe kicks off a little more of the darker characters. So it feels to me like I'm really hopeful for what James Gunn brings to the world. It feels like the old sort of the last regime's DC movies maybe aren't doing quite as well as they'd hoped. So maybe this new take will. I think they're talking about encompassing darker characters, so that'd be great.
Is that something? Would you want to work with? Would you want to get involved with James Gunn's DC universe? Because again, you have all this comic book experience, both in comics, TV, and film. Like, would you want to come back to this genre and work together with James? And if so, like, what character would you want to take on next? If you had any choice you could make.
Well, I'm not sure I have a dark character. The character I would love to do in DC universe more than ever would be a funny Bizarro, which sounds weird, but I love Bizarro and always have. And I just think a half-hour sitcom starring Bizarro would be amazing. But that said,
I would take it.
I'll be honest with you. At this point in my career, I would never say never to anything. Let's hear what we're talking about, But it's more fun to think about sort of original things that I want to do. So that's kind of where I've been focusing now. Is what can I come up with now to bring to the world? So, so that's sort of my new take. The strike helped because there was nothing else to do, but to dream up new things. So I'm working on some new ideas. I've got a comic that just came out yesterday, actually, that I'm doing with Dark Horse. It's an original, so a detective horror type story. So Borealis, everyone should go out and buy it. So I'm focusing on sort of trying to do things that are more original to me, and But that said, last year I finished pilots for several projects. I finished a Hellraiser pilot. I finished a pilot for a Stephen King story called 1408. And we'll see if something comes out of those eventually. And so, trying to stay busy.
No, of course, yeah, and I understand, yeah, because I was thinking a lot about, like, yeah, I wonder, like, with the strikes now in place, like, now the strikes are over, how quickly things will move forward. I guess I know with the holidays now, at the time that we're recording this, surely things are slow now, but I feel like once we get into January, I feel like a lot of things are going to pick up more because, I think studios and networks are just like, we need to get back, because they need that content.
Well, here's hoping. I mean, they do have a lot of content sort of stashed, so. But we are also in a world now, and I've never seen this, where they take shows off and just put them away for tax write-offs and stuff. That's kind of a new one. I've seen shows, I've seen movies especially canceled or whatever halfway through or whatever. It's very rare, but this is a whole new, to me, sort of deal, where you not only cancel a show, but you take it out completely. It becomes, it's missing in action. You can no longer see it. I have some friends on a show called Shining Veil that just got canceled. It was on the Stars Network, but it's a WB show. It got canceled after 2 seasons, and at the end of this year, it's gone. You can't see it anymore. So there you go. Usually they would let them linger, or put out DVDs of them or something. Swamp Thing's available on Tubi, by the way, the TV show.
But I just going back to Swamp Thing for a second, because something that I remember that warmed my heart over the last few years is that even though the show was short lived, we saw the other DC media really like include Swamp Thing. So did you ever see the moment in the Crisis of Infinite Earths crossover where we see the Swamp Thing universe for a little second?
You mean on the TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did. I checked that out. I believe that was a clip from our show.
Yeah, that was it. They were showing your universe, and then on Titans last year, no, earlier this year, they also showed Swamp Thing refit. Like, what does that mean for you to see other DC creators being like, because I feel like everyone is kind of almost feeling the same way, that this should never been taken away from us. So let us honor it the way we can. Like, how is it seeing that for you, that other creators in the DC realm are honoring you guys?
Well, I don't know if they're honoring us or if they're honoring Swamp Thing, the character, but it's great. Look, whatever happens, I don't hate Swamp Thing, so the character, I mean, I still think it has great potential people can do amazing things with it. I had my turn, and I'm very happy I had that. I hope other people can do great things with it. James Mangold is a great director, and I think I look forward very much to what he can do with Swamp Thing. I think he's writing the script too, so more power to him. He's a good guy too, so I wish him the best with that. I hope they make it, and so yeah, look. I don't own Swamp Thing. I don't have any proprietary interest in it. I just love the character, and so if people keep using it, great.
Wonderful. Well, anything else you talk about some of the things that you had been working on, but what is next for you? Like are you getting ready to work on something else that you can talk about that people can look forward to?
Well, Borealis is coming out now, so I hope people pick that up. Nothing I can announce yet, but yeah, things are in development. Always things percolating around the edges. That's the life of a writer. It isn't until it is. And so, look, I think, as I go forward too, I enjoy writing. I love to do more writing, and just as opposed to managing. And so we'll see what that means. But, I would never turn down fantastic, show or something. So, but we'll see what the future holds. I've had an amazing it sounds like I hope it doesn't sound like I've been complaining on this.
No, 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 no. Being an artist in a creative field like this, it comes with its ups and downs, And I think no, I don't know. You're not complaining at all. Again, I appreciate. I'm hoping that listeners, when they hear this, that they will also take it to heart. Yeah, it is. It's a very challenging field, but like yeah, like you're not like you seem extremely grateful for everything you got into do, and
Oh, I'm so
so yeah,
lucky. I've had the greatest career. I've worked with fantastic people. I've had my ups and downs, as everyone has. But I always wanted to be a writer. I got to be a writer. People paid me stupid amounts of money to do it, and what's not to like? So and yeah, I've got to scratch my itch on a lot of things that I never thought I'd get to do. So, to write, I did Ash versus Evil Dead, and to write Evil Dead was a dream come true. I've loved Evil Dead since the first ones came out. So to do that, it's up with Swamp Thing in terms of how much I revere the Ash character, and I got to know Bruce Campbell and all that. That was great. So in terms of other people's characters, I've worked on everybody I've wanted to work on, and so hopefully maybe some other people want to work on some of mine, and we'll see what happens.
never say never, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing your stories, your experience, what comes with being a showrunner. And again, like I said, with this podcast, I'm hoping to help people see more of what it's like to be in that job, because I'm always fascinated by that gig, because it's not an easy position at all. It comes with a lot of responsibility, like you were talking about. So yeah, thank you for your time, and happy holidays. Be
Same to
safe out
you.
there.
Yep. Have a good day.
And that's gonna do it for this week's episode of the Showrunner Whisperer. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed my chat with Mark. He was a lovely guy, and he is a lovely guy, and I hope to talk to him in the near future about whatever he has coming up soon. So, but yeah, like we've said before, if there's anything you find from this interview that you want to share, if you're a content creator, if you want to write it as an article, or do it as a YouTube video, or maybe a TikTok or whatever, just link us back at Showrunner Whisperer, and all the links to where we are on social media are down below. And because with the on Twitter, yes, Elon, I ain't calling it X. On Twitter, we're at Showrunner Talk, so that one is the only different one from all the other platforms where we are at Showrunner Whisperer. So, but yeah, if you want to find me, you can find me at and back on all social media. I am on Twitch, Kick, and YouTube, and where I stream video games often, regularly. And I'm a senior writer for screenwriter.com. If you want to get all the latest news in the world of superheroes, and you can also check out my Michael Rosenbaum interview that I did, that debuted on the same day as episode 1 of the Showrunner Whisperer, and where we talked about his legacy as Lex Luthor, aka the greatest Lex Luthor in live action. And yeah, check out Multiverse of Color, of course. We massively appreciate it. We have a great team over here covering the world of pop culture, and there's much more to come. So, but once again, for the Showrunner Whisperer, you can find it on Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Showrunner Whisperer, and on Twitter, like I said, at Showrunner Talk. So go support us on the social media, because that's a good way to keep up with the show when we release new episodes. Speaking of new episodes, if you have not done so already, go ahead and hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, all the places where you can find your podcast at. And if you have just a few minutes of your time, leave us some 5-star reviews on the Apple Podcast page or the other platforms, but especially Apple Podcasts, because not only is it great to hear from you guys and hear what you think about the show, but also it's a great way to get the Showrunner Whisperer elevated in Apple Podcasts, so that more people can find the show. And because we want to grow this community, we want all fans of television to come to this episode, not to this episode, to this show, and enjoy themselves and hear from from the showrunners for maybe one of their favorite TV shows. So again, it is so easy. It is free. Does it cost you anything? It is just hitting the subscribe button. And also, if you like to listen to your podcast on YouTube, you can subscribe to us on Multiverse of Color's official YouTube channel and get all your good stuff there. So with that said, we're gonna wrap it up for this week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with another interview with another showrunner, which I'm excited for you guys to hear. But until then, I'm Andrew Bite, and we'll see you next time on the Showrunner Whisperer.